Let's start with literature in English. Okay, so here, remember we stopped at the aspects of prose. I told you that the prose is a non-metrical form of writing, that is, doesn't involve any form of rhythmic pattern or meter. All right, it's a free flow of writing, and then in a prose work, what happens is it has to do more with chapters. You understand? So now, as you can see, the paragraphs will form the chapters. You understand? So novels are divided into chapters. Another word for a novel, as you can see from the previous lecture, is that a novel is can be seen as a story or as a prose, and there are different division or dimension to a prose. You can have short story, you can have novella or novelettes, and you can also have a novel itself. So novel is, in terms of size, the biggest amongst the two, which are short story and novelette. So novelette or novella is quite in high amounts in terms of size and quantity than the short story. Okay, yeah. So the short stories are just basically all this text that would have about 1 to 20 chapters, or at most 1 to 50 chapters. Do you understand? So now we're able to also examine the different types of a prose work. Okay, so we looked at sociological novel, historical novel, Bildungsroman novel, which I think I promised I'm going to explain them um, this lecture. So we also examined the aspects of Gothic novel, romance novel, which others will call romantic novels, and then we looked at the aspects of yes, scientific novel. Okay, it has to do with innovation and experimentation. Okay, so these are the novels that we looked at. So now, starting with the first aspect, which has to do with sociological novel. So novels that contains incidences or events that usually occur in society are called sociological novels. Do you understand? So they try to portray um, different, both evil, good, or bad that usually happen in society. So it will definitely illustrate that. Sociological novel would basically tell us things that we can see within our society. Okay, yes, and that's what we're meant to really learn. Historical novels are novels that talk about past events, past experiences, okay? Yes, and how it relates to the present as well too. Is there any form of correspondence between what happened in the past and what we are experiencing, or what is prevalent in the future or at present? Now, we also looked at the aspects of Gothic novel. These are um, novels of ghosts. Do you understand? Novels that evoke shock, novels that will evoke maybe a feeling of pity, and the rest of them. Do you understand? Those are examples of the novels. Then, like Castle of Otranto by Horace Walpole, an example of that. Okay, and then I equally explained the aspects of romance novel, which is a novel that appreciates nature in general. That is a novel that talks about um, the appreciation of humans in relation to their environment, that's the nature to which the environment or the where they are found. You know, the next aspect here has to do with scientific novels. So novels that talks about technological innovation or technological advancements or experimentation would be classified as scientific novels. So these are novels that will look for how to bring about the improvement and the progress of science. Okay. Now the next one is Bildungsroman novel. These are educational novels. The word Bildungsroman is coming from the German. Okay. Yes, it's a novel of development from the early states, that's from childhood to adulthood. That's the main character in question. Will be developing, will be learning, will be getting exposed, getting influenced, all right, from the earlier stage or from the childhood stage to the adult stage. Do you understand? So I'd like you to take note of these novel types. Okay. So pay attention to these novel types that I've been able to explain. I'm going to explain more as well too, for considering sociological novel, for instance, considering historical novels, history, or you can call it history or historical novels. Okay. Then three, you can look at Gothic novels. Then four, you can always look at the aspects of romance, or you can say romantic novel. Okay, it has to do with the appealing of emotion. All right. Then you have scientific novel. Okay, like I told you, the novel that has to do with technological advancement, improvement in technology, all right, innovation, invention, and the rest of them. Then I'm going to introduce, okay, then I also emphasize on Biodon's, Roman novel, okay, and then I already explained all the six, so let me add more to it. So we have epistolary novel, epistolary novel. So now, epistolary novel is a novel that is structured in form of a letter, an epistle. Do you understand? Now, this novel is more like an address. The writer is trying to address someone else. Do you understand? And while you're reading this particular novel, you can easily follow the expression, and even easily follow the structure. Do you understand? So it begins like a letter and then it ends as a letter. The major thing to take here as a lesson is that an epistolary novel is an address. Do you understand? The addresser, which is the writer, and the addressee, which is what? The receiver of the letter. So you're trying to read about their communication, their interaction. Do you understand? All through the chapters of the novel. I'm going to give an example of that. I don't know if you read Mariam Abba. Do you understand? So Long a Letter. So Long a Letter is the title of the novel, and it was written by Mariam Abba. I don't know if you've written that. So if you haven't, it's a very good example of an epistolary novel. So if you go get yourself a copy and ensure to read that. Okay. So it is a picaresque, picaresque novel. Okay, picaresque novel. Now, picaresque novel is from the Spanish word picaro, and what it means is basically a description of adventure. You know, a particular character in the novel wishing to go to a very distant journey, all right, outside of his family, see how he could survive the nature, see how he could survive life generally. That's a picaresque novel. And I don't know if you've read Daniel Defoe's Robinson Crusoe. Is an example of a picaresque novel. You'll notice that the character, okay, was always wishing to be in another destination at different points in time. That's a perfect example to that. Okay, so here we're looking at these are 8 types of novels. As a UTME student, you're supposed to know all these 8 types of novels. And remember, as a YX student as well too, this is still relevant literary novel types. Okay, you're supposed to know each of them one after another. Okay, now let's see. All of this was basically like a recap of what I taught in the last class, so that you could also have a very good understanding about them. Now, in today's class, we're going to be considering how do you analyze a novel? I mean, what are those elements that you're supposed to look out for when you encounter a novel? This is so relevant to YX students. For UTME students, you're not going to be doing any form of literary analysis. However, you should be very familiar with each of these prose or novel elements. For instance, what are those prose elements? We're going to analyze each of them one after another. The first aspect is theme, which you can as well call thematic structure. Okay, thematic structure, or you can just rightly say theme. Okay, most literature students should understand what a theme implies. Okay, now after that, we're going to be looking at another word for theme here is the subject matter, but the word subject matter is most prominent in poetry. Okay, so subject matter can also be used to replace theme, but in context, we use subject matter mostly for poetry. Okay, here the next one is looking at the plot. Another word for plot is the storyline. Okay, how does the storyline of that particular story, or that particular prose, or that particular novel, how does it look like? Then, having understood that, we look at character. Okay, characters. I also consider characterization. Characterization. Is that okay? So we consider characters. Okay, those are portrayed in this particular, and then we look at characterization. Characterization. So here, the next one is characters, characterization, plot, storyline, thematic structure, or theme. Then we could consider we could consider style, or what you call narrative technique. Okay, narrative technique. I'm going to just give a straightforward response to style or narrative technique broadly. Okay, the style or narrative technique. And do we have any possible one to consider? Um, when you look at character and characterization, look at theme, you look at plot, you look at style or narrative technique, those should be very, very vital. Okay, so let's see. I would like to start with the plot or storyline. Now, in literature, what does plot or storyline means? The plot means the sequential arrangement of events. Do you understand? That is how the event unfolds from the very first chapter to the next chapter to another chapter, like that. How does the event unfold? Now, just imagine this. If you're watching a movie, definitely you'll be watching it from a particular scene to another scene, like that. Do you understand? And then that would really give you a good understanding of what you're watching because you can't jump a particular phase or a particular scene of the movie. If you do, that means the understanding has been distorted. Now, what is advisable for you to do is the plot means having to go through every event in that story, how actions, how events unfolds. That's what you're trying to examine. One event, another event like that. So how those events keep unfolding. That's the storyline. Now, we're going to take this one after another. The plot account, because I would like you to write, that's why I'm illustrating it, aside from just having to explain them to you. The plot account is the sequence of events in the text and how it unfolds. Do you understand? And how it unfolds. This refers to This refers to chapter revealing. That is, each chapter in the novel would always be revealing what would happen or what is presently happening, in which there's no element of suspense at all. As you move to a particular chapter, you're getting to read and understand what is going on there. Are we good? So, the plot account is the sequence of events in the text and how it unfolds. This refers to chapter revealing or chapter exposition. Do you understand? Chapter exposition. That is, it gets to tell you what each chapter in the novel will tell or is currently telling. So that's the plot. Now, so this is the novel. This is the novel itself. So the plot account is the novel itself. The storyline is the novel. So that's why some people tell you, oh, some storyline could be very interesting. Yes. Yes. Some storyline could be very interesting. Now, and then remember, some writers, I remember mentioning to you that in the last class, that a writer of a novel work is called a novelist, a prosist, or a proseman. I hope that is clear to you. Now, the unfolding of events can take different style or different shape. Okay, it could take different styles or different shapes. Now, let's see. What happens is that there could be chronological storyline or sequential storyline. So there are what? Chronological. There are chronological storyline. What do I mean by chronological storyline? Now, what it simply implies is the fact that all events would always start from the very beginning, then to the very end. I mean, all events will keep unfolding with time, and there might not be any form of going backward. It will just keep playing all through. And then there is reversal storyline. Now, what it simply means is that sequence of events could possibly start either from the middle and then continue and then go back to the beginning again. So there will be a form of remembrance, like going back to show or to review some certain things. Some novelists will tend to expose their writing in that form. Do you understand? You can expose their writing in that form. It happens. So there's chronological plot account and there's reversal storyline or reversal plot accounts. The next one is thematic structure. Now let me look at the thematic structure. So the theme of a novel is the central idea. The central idea. Okay. The message that the writer is trying to portray. The messages that the writer is trying to portray. Do you understand? So, what do we mean by theme? For every novel that you would come across, for every novel that you're reading, there is always a message that the writer is trying to pass across to you. There is something that the writer wants you to understand. Do you understand? So that's the theme. Just the same way you watch movies. I'm using movies to relate this because I know that's what so many people are exposed to. Now, just the same way you watch movie, and then when you watch movies, you realize that, oh, I think this thing really happens in real life. So the theme can be anything. It could be marriage. Once it's marriage, it means that that particular novel is centered on maybe portraying positive marriage lifestyle or negative marriage lifestyle. Do you understand? It could be any of this. So whichever that the novel is portraying, all that matters to you is for you to learn the lesson. Just pick the message. Message is very relevant to any piece of a novel, not just a novel, actually, even in drama or also in poetry. But our major concentration here is the novel. So that is basically what the reader strives. Every reader would always strive to understand the message, the thematic structure. What can I deduce from the meaning of this particular text? What is the writer trying to communicate across to the reader? That's the theme of every novel. Is that understood? Now, here, every every text, every text or novel will portray a theme or a message for the readers. Yes, I've never seen any particular novel that does not have any thematic structure for the readers to read or for readers to understand. I don't think I've seen any. There are usually something to learn, usually something to pick. So now these are theme is centered on regions or location. For example, let me give you a practical example. For most non-African texts, you understood what I mean by for most non-African texts, their major or common thematic features could be marriage or relationship or friendship. Do you understand? And then maybe heroism, betrayal. Those are the common thematic features in non-African texts. That is, a novel that is portrayed or written by a non-African novelist or prosist or proseman. Let me illustrate that for you. The thematic structure or the theme of every novel is rendered according to the location. All right, according to the location. Most non-African, most non-African texts we focus on most non-African texts will focus on the theme of betrayal, okay, family, death. Can you see? Some can be marriage and so on. These are basically for non-African texts. Now let's continue. For African, For African texts, comma, most of the